All right, it's 10:45, and as yesterday, we have a busy agenda ahead of us, so better get going. I see familiar faces in the room. We're glad to have you back after the first half yesterday, but I see new faces as well. Thank you for joining us. I hope those that are already familiar with my introduction from yesterday will forgive the repetition, but I think it's important to have some introductory words. So, welcome to the second half of our joint symposium. We represent Pensoft Publishers, LifeWatch ERIC, and the Naturalis Biodiversity Center. Today, we will be presenting the second half of our array of exciting initiatives and research projects. But first, I'd like to thank our collaborators once again in this regard, Christos Arvanitidis for LifeWatch ERIC and Nios Ras from the Naturalis Biodiversity Center. Again, our collaboration has many chapters. This is just the latest, and we are very grateful for all their support. Okay. The clicker doesn't seem to be. There we go. So today we have 8 showcases, all about knowledge transfer, research continuity, and the reusability of scientific results. At Pensoft, we've learned over the years that if we only take the results of research projects within the temporal bounds of their own initiatives, there is no legacy. They exist in a vacuum, so to speak, and leave no lasting impact. This theme of a lasting impact is what we want to discuss today. What we are trying to accomplish is to have 2 sessions, again, this is the second one, with 16 abstracts in total, more than 90 contributing authors, more than 20 research projects and initiatives, and more than 30 research institutions and organizations. Together, we have 3 primary goals. First, we will be showcasing the importance of open data in terms of the long-term prominence of scientific outputs. We'll also be linking targeted communication to actionable knowledge in this regard. And finally, this is very crucial, we'll be exploring pathways to impact in the domain of decision-making. How can science affect policy? How can science affect governance? I take this opportunity to say a few words on Pensoft as well, for those of you that haven't had the chance to meet us at our booth downstairs yet. We're a company with more than 30 years of history, based out of Sofia, Bulgaria, and we specialize in academic publishing and science communication. In terms of the former, we stand behind more than 80 academic journals and more than 1,000 scientific books. We're also the developers of the full-featured open access Alpha publishing platform. My colleague Theodor yesterday presented the second iteration of our proprietary writing tool, which is innovating the data publishing landscape as we speak. And in case you missed his showcase, he'd be very happy to explain all the exciting work we're doing in this regard at our stand or here after the symposium. In terms of projects, we're involved in more than 40 research projects under the Horizon Europe and the Horizon 2020 programs. We specialize in particular in the communication, dissemination, and exploitation of their results, making sure they reach the right audiences, the right stakeholders. Recently, we began sharing our experience in this regard with what we call the Science Radar newsletter. This QR code on the screen here allows you to subscribe, and we really want to showcase the importance of communication, of outreach, in terms of securing this long-term legacy that we'll be talking about today. Obviously, we're not only looking to our own portfolio for inspiration for Science Radar, we'd like to hear from experts such as you. So please feel free to share your experiences, your stories, your innovations using this email right here. And we hope to see you in our next issue. Last but not least, as I already mentioned, we have a booth on the exhibition floor. We've had the pleasure of welcoming many of you there. Booth number 9, in case you don't know, and we have materials for the projects we'll be showcasing here today. And we'd be happy to carry over the conversations that are started yesterday and today. So before we begin, a couple of housekeeping points. We have 8 showcases of a 10-minute duration each. I kindly ask our speakers here in presence to keep to that time frame. The rest are online. I am told they have joined us via Zoom, but their presentations will be pre-recorded. They will be available, however, for a Q&A segment at the end. We will have 20 minutes for that to address all your observations, views, etc. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. You already heard his name, Christos Evanitis, who will be speaking to us about how science, technology, and innovation come together in pursuit of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Here. Pocket. Thank you so much, Peter. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how to start, after such a splendid introduction to our session here. Let's start with the title, which is From Knowledge to Solutions, Science, Technology, and Innovation in Support of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But the essential component here is actually in here, leveraging European biodiversity networks for global impact. And we are here as LifeWatch, as Pensoft and Elixir and many others, Naturalis definitely, to represent a network which is working actually on the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I will come back, to this later on, but for the time being, what I want, to show is the context in which we work, currently, and the urgencies that this concept, brings. We have witnessed, all of us, information that is coming the last probably 5 or 10 years from publications from around the world that we are entering into a triple planetary crisis. They report that the components of this crisis are the biodiversity loss. Well, I would prefer, biodiversity severe change, but it doesn't matter, climate change and also pollution. We all know that the ecosystem disruption has severe impacts into people's health and the ecosystems and the economies. There is a deadline, the 2030, which is approaching fast for meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's very important, to measure and try, to report to what extent we have already achieved these goals. And of course, then is the need, to define the future. That means the post-SDG agenda and the vision, of course. And this is how we work. In the next slide, I will give you the network. So in this network, participants are research infrastructures from Europe. And the research infrastructures represent the science, the S component of the STI approach of the UN. There are infrastructures, again, from Europe that they represent the technology. There are also big projects that have been funded by the European Commission and the publishers and other such type of organizations that they represent the innovation along with the infrastructures. So this network actually wanted to work on the next day, and that means on the post-SDG agenda. And for this, we tried to work on the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. You might know that has been adopted in December 2022. It has 7 strategic considerations and 23 targets. And it promotes this transformative biodiversity action in the years 2030 and 2050, in between them. Now, the point is how this network works right now. Let me give you this slide and explain you the way that we came together and how we started, this collaboration. But this collaboration is to integrate information and synthesize a point of action that we can implement, in the years to come. First, we implement advancing science and technology and innovation. And this is the STI approach in support of the Global Biodiversity Framework, the SDGs of the UN, and the post-SDG agenda. Then we apply integrated, data-driven approaches and participatory governance. Production, well, we have already published a white paper. I'll talk about this later on. And we are working in order to develop the roadmap of the activities in the years to come. We are supporting approaches to strengthening science policy interfaces. And finally, we give particular attention to synergies between biodiversity and human health. This is the One Health approach of the UN, and there is another network which is being formed right now. A declaration will be published later on this week, I suppose. So what we did, first we said, all right, let's sit together, and see how we can work collectively through this global biodiversity framework. And the easiest way we found was, to set up an XLS sheet and identify, the columns as the strategic considerations of this global biodiversity framework, and all the organizations as rows. And finally, we filled in, the information where was appropriate, okay? And then we synthesized, this information, and this is what we're going to present to you. We have monthly meetings every last Monday of each month. We have carried out, 21 meetings up to now, and we still carry on. So the first strategic consideration refers to indigenous peoples and local communities. What we do here, we have realized that we all recognize their rights, their knowledge, and their contribution that is coming from indigenous people and local communities. We all try to apply fair and care principles to all of our research products. Of course, the care component is more relevant to the indigenous people. And then we co-design, we co-develop, we implement inclusive governance and benefit sharing in our everyday work. Then the next consideration is on the collective efforts to achieve the targets. And there, we are carrying out multidisciplinary research and interoperability at all scales. We are trying to integrate our biodiversity data portals and observatories and real-time monitoring where possible. And we promote the green computing and the citizen science, and especially the data that are coming from this activity. Concerning now the strategic consideration 3, which relates to CBD objectives, our research products are used currently for conservation, for sustainable use, for equitable benefit sharing, and compliance with the frameworks of the access and benefit sharing and digital sequence information. Now, the next one is on the strategic considerations 4 and 5, which refer to innovation and ecosystem approach. And we contribute to these things by developing actually digital twins, federated services, and also artificial intelligence tools on the cloud for biodiversity. We integrate cross-domain data, and we made a kind of presentation yesterday in our talk. And then our communities develop models, and we use these models and in order to test scenarios on ecosystem management and try, to help the policy implementers in order to take the right measures. Then the last strategic considerations are the 6 and 7, and they refer to cooperation and health linkages. And there we have developed already partnerships with international key players, for example, the CBD, the IPBES, the EU Green Deal, and the Global South. We are trying to promote the nexus biodiversity health and the One Health. And we develop tools linking environmental and health data, although this is a big challenge, at least for the time being. Now, why we're here? We're here because we would like to expand to the UN science and technology and innovation priorities. And what we ask for from the international community is to set biodiversity as foundational to planetary health, global biodiversity science infrastructure to be compact, and finally to mainstream biodiversity monitoring in EU frameworks. And we believe that by doing this, we're going to contribute very much in addressing actually the post-SDG agenda and also to implement some of the strategic considerations of the strategic working plan. Now, here you can see our commitment. This is a white paper published in Rio as a policy brief. This is where we state clearly which are the aims of this network. We also say in which way we collaboratively can contribute to the global biodiversity framework and the agenda. And finally, what are the next steps for the roadmap that we have, to develop. And our job here is to call for a global alliance, and we propose federated, interoperable landscape among the leading infrastructures. We propose sharing infrastructure, aligning data, and also joint funding. This is very important. And biodiversity as pillar of peace, prosperity, and justice. And by closing this talk, we would like, to call to the global community to join forces in order to make this big leap from fragmented to holistic, future-ready science systems, to integrate biodiversity in all policy domains and frameworks. And finally, this is our invitation to all of you for this strategic collaboration. Thank you so much for your attention. I will take the questions at the end.
Thank you, Christos. The urgency of a situation such as this calls for comprehensive solutions, and I think you've seen a great example of this. We carry on with the topic of governance, moving on from the global to the European context with the BioAgora project and its knowledge exchange network for biodiversity monitoring. And I invite Maria Basi Romero from CREAF to present.
Okay, now, can you hear me well? Yeah, yes, online as well. Okay, good. Nice, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Maria Blasi and I'm a researcher at CREAF in Barcelona, Spain. And I'm gonna be talking about the BioAgora project and then a biodiversity monitoring knowledge expert network. So just to set a bit the arena and based on the session of long-lived data and what happened after the projects, we can think of how do we organize the data and information on biodiversity so that it's easily accessible for policymakers? How to bring the experts in the projects together to discuss and produce impact on their research. So that's basically the nutshell of what's BioAgora like for and the Science Survey for Biodiversity. And this BioAgora and Science Survey for Biodiversity, they come together, and I'm going to explain you why and what's the legacy basically of BioAgora will be the Science Survey for Biodiversity. So what is BioAgora? It's an EU project, Horizon project, that runs from 2022 to 2027. And it's a big consortium of 22 partners led by SIKE in Finland. And the aim is to really connect this research and policy for the needs, for policy making. So the main outcome will be the Science Survey for Biodiversity to orchestrate the science policy interface at the EU level. So basically, we're going to create this kind of Greek agora, to bring together like all the different research and policy. So the mandate is to really work with EU-funded projects and minimize the duplication of work. So our project goals is like not to create anything new, but to really use what is the existing knowledge there and to mobilize it. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into deep, like we already have a good introduction from the previous speaker, thanks. But we all are aware of this unprecedented like biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation. And there's like really big commitments at the global level. And then, as I said, I'm going to talk about the European aspects here. So in 2020, it was launched this EU biodiversity strategy for 2030, which became also like more the actionable part of it is the EU nature restoration regulation, where it's legally binding that the member states will have to restore the ecosystems by 2050. So yeah, deadlines are shortly coming. And then here is just to have a bit of an overview, what are the different like nature directives that we have like in Europe. And then basically what's the precedent of like how it's gonna be one of the basically, again, legacy of some EU projects from Europa Bond was really to produce this ebook, what's going to be the proposal of the Biodiversity Observation Coordination Center that just have like the closed tenders call, and then it's going to have the kickoff next year. Why am I talking this? Because really to monitor this process towards these goals for preserving biodiversity, monitoring is essential. But we know that biodiversity monitoring is really spatially and temporally fragmented, and we really need to do something about it. So if now we zoom into what is the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030, there was something in there saying that the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030 has the mandate of establishment of a science policy mechanism, that's the science survey, for research-based policy options and for ratcheting this implementation of biodiversity commitments. And here there's where it's Biora coming in. So Biora has many functions that it's decided on how to reach and setting up the science service for biodiversity, but it can be summarized in 3 main functions. And those are really transforming the processes within and between science policy. So to really bring in and testing new ways of going away from what's the current situation and how do we deal with this interaction of science policy interface, and to really like bring innovation there of like ways of adding knowledge as well, not only research, and then bringing together these different networks. How do we bring them together? I don't know where the pointing is, but we bring them together by creating and supporting this. Well, it's fine. Or okay, thanks. And then we bring them together by creating and supporting these active thematic networks that I'm just going to introduce now briefly. And then the core function at the end will be answering requests and building up evidence base. What do I mean with that? So there is also like the science service would be the scientific pillar of the Knowledge Center for Biodiversity that was set to track this Biodiversity Strategy 2030. And the idea is that if there is questions from the Commission to really like move forward and to help for a better implementation of those goals and to follow better like the reporting of the nature directives, there is sometimes knowledge that we don't know. So how do we access this knowledge in a quick way? So that's the way like we mobilize these networks to answer then these requests coming from policy in a really fast way. So we are really testing a lot of like protocols in this issue now for Biora. So yeah, talking about the transformative process, also like bringing in innovation ways of how do we tackle with all these aspects. This is just like taken from the IPES newly transformative change assessment, where yeah, with ecology alone, we're not really gonna bend the curve. So we need this interaction of different disciplines and to really tackling these underlying causes that were really affecting biodiversity loss. When I'm talking with supporting thematic networks, so these are really linked to the different topics of the biodiversity strategy. And then they are really, we call them like the knowledge expert networks, the KENs. So it's easy to remember, so not the Barbies one, the KENs. And then, so we are really gonna get, like we have topics on marine, freshwater, nature-based solutions, pollination, multifunctional landscapes, transformative change monitoring, the ones that I'm coming here to present, and more to come soon. So the idea is that every topic that exists and different or existing networks, so they really mobilize together to really be part of these agoras that we are gonna launch. So the monitoring can really, we facilitate then the integration of information when it comes related to mainly like the also nature restoration regulation, the biodiversity, European biodiversity strategy, and the ecosystem assessment. We activate the existing network of monitoring EU projects. And when we talk about monitoring at the EU level, we cannot really we have to talk about Europa Bond and Biodiversity Plus. So we really build on those networks. So then we have also relevant policy links outside the EU, so with IPES and the CEO expert groups. So we have links within our network with monitoring assessment of IPES, with the Nexus assessment and the transformative change report, the task force on scenarios, and part of the Committee of Earth Observation Satellites, the CEOs, on Biodiversity Expert Group. And then we're also involved in testing different urgent requests, and we're participating, having very close contact with the EU Commission. So when it comes to relation also with the themes of this conference, like how do we put into context? So how do we tackling like open data? So for example, how are the different projects sharing their data? It's not easily to find for the members of the policy officers for the EU. How findable is that data? And then to really help those projects' data management plans. When it comes to data integration, so really how to, for example, mobilize this information for indicators for the EU. We are having a lot of lack of information in there, especially like to link it with the nature restoration regulation, but also with the nature directives, with the habitats and birds directives. And then to evaluate, for example, data flows of the European coordinated monitoring programs to produce EVBs. So what is already being there, how we can actually get those EVBs to link them with policy. And here we have links with the metadata database for the Europa Bond. And then also, for example, like how is this data on living labs and study sites, and then how we can get a better integration. And data applications, so for example, there's gonna be this coordination, not only at the EU level, but also at the subnational level. And then and the links with the ebook that it's gonna soon starting, and then we see how we deal with that, no? And then we're addressing the data gap between unused data into, insights for the policy design. And then how to better improve this reporting at the end, what we want. Is like, is it all data efficient, or how we can better improve those reportings? And then finally, like the community engagement by supporting the existing networks and mobilizing then indeed all the scientific research that is like we produce, but then what do we do with that, no? And then we create this link between the breaking the silos between research, the EU policy, but also the member states, because they are the ones really in charge of reporting them. And then we have also like a strong support then with Biodiversity Plus. And then at the end, the main goal is to really create this long-term forum for dialogue. So it's really like there to stay. And so coming up, like we're gonna be launching soon this BioAgora, this Agora for the different groups, and you're welcome to join in. It's gonna be based on a logging system where you can actually like join different groups and different topics, different networks. And basically the projects can really share their outputs, their news there. It becomes like this arena of collaboration as well to facilitate this dialogue between experts and policy. And then also, for example, call for events. And that's really coming like really soon. And then I'm also gonna share like what's our coming up next events. So for example, like this is already like open abstract submission here for the UFRO conference. And we are participating here, collaborating with Biodiversity Plus, GBIF, and Marco Polo to really make this Biodiversity Monitoring Week. So please save the date in May from 4 to 8 in Montpellier in France. So it's gonna bring together all this private sector policy, research, all in related to biodiversity monitoring at the EU level. Yeah, and that's all. Thank you very much. We're oops.
Thank you, Maria. I've personally been involved in BioAgora, and I really think the Science Service for Biodiversity and the Monitoring Knowledge Exchange Networks can be great success stories, but they need your support. Maria was kind enough to bring some materials with her, which she will distribute to you now, and we would greatly appreciate your input and support. I'll now move on to our first online presenter via pre-recording, Sharif Islam of the Naturalis Biodiversity Center, who will be speaking to us about transitioning from projects to platforms. So really moving beyond the initiatives and really setting up this long-term legacy that is at the core of the session.
And we know that this is connected to research outputs. So one of the vision is, can modular composable infrastructures with open science and open source inputs help? And one thing we are exploring with the projects of data space can this done. So the next few slides, I will be talking about the BioD project, and I'll introduce this idea of data space and see how that can help us with biodiversity data integration. The goal of BMD is to create a single access point supporting managers of natural resource sites. Here are some tools for design API environment, and also with map viewers. The goal is that these tools will empower users to monitor biodiversity, identify and analyze drivers of change, and project climate impacts on species habitats. Brief overview of the project structure. I will be primarily talking about the data space here. As I mentioned, single access point, different virtual research environment, data harmonization, and find more the BMD project website. A brief note about geospatial and visual tools. As we all know, spatial data is central to biodiversity research. We really need to know where things are happening. And visual tools help us with interactive exploration, overlaying multiple layers. It is also an easy way of stakeholder communication. So this is one of the reasons I have a very important emphasis on visual tools and visualization. Now I will give a quick example on the Natura 2000 site data. We will be closely working with the network here. These are stakeholders. Natura 2000 is the network of nature protection areas, territory union. So in this example, you see this is a site in Austria, and there are some data attached. This record, for example, it protects 5 species. When you start working this kind of data, you realize there are photos, different definition. That often makes it tricky to understand integrated use. And the good thing is that there are APIs and structures for getting data. For example, the European Environment Agency has SQL, very interface where you can write queries and get structured information like this. But then you see there are other challenges. For example, what is population type P here? What is lower bound? So there are data definition and CSV files that explains, for instance, here you can find out the population status for the species. P means permanent, lower bound means lower limits for the species population size. And I'm pretty sure lots of projects are using this kind of data, running their own scripts, trying to figure these are not might be shared, so scratch. So one solution is that can create, for example, a linked data model, something like JSON-LD specification, where, for example, there is a machine-readable metadata describing what population type is, what it means, and then we have the data that can link to it. So the idea of this metadata description is that metadata can be attached to the data. It also has a description where machines can understand. So these are some of the things we will also explore BMD and see how this let's get into a little bit more detail. So in our example, so there are site information and so species data. So oftentimes they're together, but they're also sources. So of course we need to do integration, but to make this integration a little more specific and enforceable, data space can offer guidelines and way to enforce, for example, what JSON structure we use, what data standards we use, and some of these things, of course, boil down to agreement to actually, well, so it's not just the technical aspect. So the idea of the data space came from European strategy for data. It came from this idea of single market, where the goal is to foster a system. But again, of course, biodiversity and the research is this ecosystem as well. So it's not just a market, and you can see there's different domain, different data space where biodiversity is. Another way of thinking about data space is this idea of picnic. So you can see that each participant has their own table. This could be an expertise, domain-specific data, and they have an agreement to share them. Rules and ways to do a picnic. In this example, of course, there's no central picnic table or a park, so that could be also an important aspect for a certain type of use of data space. So then there's also who brings that central table, who maintains that, who supports that. But this decentralized aspect of things are, I think, very important for biodiversity data integration. So I think this technology is really helpful for us to understand where biodiversity data space comes in. Another example, for example, we will have data cubes. We will also have JSON K file, bring them together, harmonize them, provide access to different ones. So those agreements and normalization and harmonization need to be some way formalized without making it too difficult together. There are also guidelines design document coming out. Obviously, this is from a green space project, where you can see there are alignment components being proposed for the organizational business side and also technical side. And this aligns nicely with the community, with different data standards and data exchange protocol, tracking licenses, links. So these are also nice foundational blocks that data space. Some of the things we learned already in projects, such as the first year of PhD. Of course, some of these things are well known, but we try to fit it within the data space concept. We need to move towards from isolated data sets to interconnected things with lightweight governance, some metadata enforcement. Instead of downloading different files, there's a lot of interesting cloud native access that we need to test. Open standards, using as much as possible existing data aggregators and repositories, and of course the human readability is important, but to automate, we really need to figure out to make machine readability fair, easier to implement and support. So looking ahead, these are some of our milestones. We already have the initial architecture design, and we're looking to our first version, prototype first data set, and of course continuity and support, but it's important, it's what we mentioned at the beginning. So there are some commitment from the partners under the project. We're also organization and research structures to make sure that these out of this project can be useful for different use cases. You can find out more again at the GitHub page and also website. Thank you for your attention. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Sharif. I think based on his talk and the one Niels delivered yesterday, we all have an idea of how ambitious a project BMD is. I take this opportunity to say that Niels will be a co-organizer of a symposium this afternoon at 4 o'clock in the Caucus Room. the challenges and perspective of high throughput biodiversity monitoring. So you're very welcome to join for that. Now we move on to a partner from the Museum für Naturkunde in Berlin, Caitlin Thorne, who will be talking to us about the data policy for the museum.
Hello, thank you for joining. My name is Caitlin Thorne, and I am the data manager at the Museum for Naturkunde, or the Natural History Museum, Berlin, Germany. Today, I'm going to be presenting transcend data and writing data for the History Museum. This was created together with Dr. Marek Peterson, who I worked on this project. We needed a data for a range of reasons. One is to establish an institutional framework for the adequate handling of research data at the Museum of Naturkunde. We are a research museum, so we support the efficient and management of the research data. We needed to refer to legal requirements and finding instructions regarding the handling of data. And we wanted to for research data management in a national and international context. In addition, the policy would promote the transfer of knowledge on the handling of research data and relevant standards to impart subject-specific competencies in this field. So the responsible handling of research data has proven to be essential for scientific progress, knowledge dissemination, and traceability, which are all things that we want to achieve within our institution. The digital transformation of research presents new challenges and need clear institutional guidelines to accomplish, to solve these challenges. Without data procedures in place, studies show that data is lost over time. As you can see in the diagram on the left, after a paper is published, the existence of the data dramatically declines over a time period. It's difficult for researchers to keep their data in place, and we need a way to ensure that data remains stable and that we can access it in the future. So how did we get to where we are today? Well, the initial development of the data policy actually started in 2020. There was a gap identified in the institution, and there was an effort to start to create the guidelines and measures for the data policy. In June 2020, seminars were held to introduce the policy and to get people to discuss the ideas and concepts that came up within the policy. Unfortunately, this project did get put on hold for a while, but in early 2024, it was handed over to me, and I looked at further developing the guidelines and evaluating similar policies, and then putting together the final documentation for the project, creating the policy. And in late 2024, we got approval from various other people in the museum who were kind of stakeholders in this project. I consulted with all different people from different parts of the museum to make sure we include information on, for example, archiving, colonial data, and then the directorate were also consulted and given the opportunity to review the policy. This year, the final approvals and implementation of the policy has been the main goal. The first step in creating the policy was research. We had to look at the world of existing policies within the museum. So we already had a policy for open access, for copyright, for colonial context data. Did we really need another policy? And how would these policies interact with each other? We also looked at all of our networks. We belong to different organizations such as the Leibniz Association and the National Research Data Infrastructure. They all have their own data policies, so we wanted to acknowledge these and incorporate them within our policy. We also looked to other institutions. both local institutions and global institutions to see how they wrote their policies and what was included in it, and if we could find out how they implemented it. That was very interesting as well. We had to define the scope of our data policy, so who would be covered by the policy. And the policy goes for all MFN staff, researchers, visiting researchers, and other partners working within the museum. What projects would it actually apply to? So in this case, we didn't just want to include traditional research projects, but also all internal projects, including third-party funded projects and our digitization efforts. What other obligations were there? There was adherence to other policies, as I mentioned, the pre-existing policies, as well as funder-specific rules. These should also be still covered, remain covered. And then who's responsible for actually ensuring the policy is put into place? So researchers and relevant staff have to follow the policy. And then the department responsible for data management must enable the infrastructure along with, in some cases, IT, and it's defined by the policy itself. So we have a few components to our policy. We have the guidelines and the measures, and together they form the data policy. The guidelines are structured as you imagine kind of a typical policy. So we have our basic definitions, principles, scope, measures, how we change and update it in the future, and the guidelines and performance measures. But the measures are a bit more unique to our policies, so they're practical steps to enable the guidelines. And we've organized those into different sections. So we have planning and training in data management, data acquisition and documentation, data management infrastructure offerings, publication and subsequent use of data, and data archiving. Our data policy encompasses all aspects of the data lifecycle and fair data principles. So we highlight the fair principles here: findable, accessible, interroperable, and reusable data is what we're aiming for. And as you can see, some examples of our measures that fall in different parts of the data lifecycle. So you can see here we have data sharing. We say a commercial data repositories should be used for storage, archiving, and making data available. And for preserving data, a robust recovery system must be in place to protect against data loss or corruption. So what is next for us? Well, at the moment, we're looking at the implementation of the project to ensure that we have the infrastructure to fulfill aspects of the policy. And at the same time, we're also looking at getting the final approval from the policy. Later this year, we also want to make sure the policy is translated into German. It's currently in English, but for our institution, we need both English and German. And then by the end of the year, we expect to have the policy distributed and put in place. Next year, to enable the policy, we want to offer workshops on different aspects of the policy. For example, how to create a data management plan, or how to appropriately store data. And then, of course, we'll always have ongoing maintenance because we want to make sure the measures are updated and in line with new advancements and recommendations. So we have a few questions for you. Do you think data policies can help museums future-proof their collections? Should all institutions have their own data policy? Or should overarching networks and associations apply with to all institutions? As I mentioned before, we already follow some of those and incorporate them within our own policy, but our own policy was able to have more specific measures that fit with our needs. And then how do you measure the success of the data policy? And can we collaborate with other museums and institutions to harmonize data policies? Thank you so much for being here today. If you have any questions, I have my contact details here. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear any questions or just your thoughts on the whole topic. And I would like to thank the following people for their support in the process of creating the platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. I think these are very good discussion points that she raised, and we can return to that slide in the discussion segment. Certainly very insightful. Now, this next presentation concerns the topic of forest health, particularly as it pertains to the management of pest outbreaks. I'll be delivering the showcase as I'm involved in the successor initiative Forset, which started last year. The two projects in focus are Forset and its predecessor Homet, and we are joined online by the project coordinator of Forset, Andrea Battisti of the University of Padua. Credit for this abstract also goes to the project manager Andrea Capellari and Davide Nardi, both from the University of Padua, and Hervé Jacques from the French National Research Institute of Agriculture, Food and Environment, otherwise known as INRAE. To begin with, let's set things into perspective. Let's provide some background. I think I'll surprise no one when I say just how important forests are to the ecological balance of the planet. I've taken the liberty here of listing just a couple of the vital ecosystem services they provide. We have soil formation, nutrient cycling, production of food, water, timber, climate regulation, flood control, biodiversity. The list goes on. I don't need to go into it now. But the other thing that is hardly surprising is just how much emphasis the EU is putting on forests. Testament to this is the European Green Deal and the dedicated strategy for forests for 2030. Nevertheless, there are challenges to be reckoned with. We call those disturbances. They can be abiotic and biotic. Abiotic disturbances are occurrences such as storms, droughts, or wildfires, whereas the biotic disturbances, which are the topic of this very talk, are insect pests and pathogens. Now, they can be native or non-native. Non-native are what we call invasive species, and they pose a substantial threat to the health of forests. By extension, this threatens the European economy as well and necessitates a firm response. The Union has already undertaken steps in this regard with regulations on key pest species, but this has to be underpinned by innovative research. We need better tools, better understanding of how these pests proliferate and how to address their spread, which is exactly where the two projects I'll be presenting today come in. The first is Homet, chronologically, holistic management of emergent forest pests and diseases. It ran between 2018 and 2022 and was coordinated by INRAE, Hervé Jacques, who I already introduced. It focused on the entire cycle of invasion when it comes to forest pests, from the initial risk assessment to the prevention, surveillance, eradication, and control. How did it pursue that lofty goal? Well, there are a couple of points to mention. First is citizen science. Essentially, consultations were undertaken with users and professionals on the ground to deliver the innovative tool SilverAlert, an application, participatory application, which put user data on the proliferation of pests, mapping data, so to speak, directly into the hands of citizen scientists, who also had input in its development and further updates. Moreover, multi-funnel traps, which you can see on the picture here, were developed especially as part of the project, featuring innovative attractants and lights. Headway was also made in the domain of remote sensing, and the approach of sentinel plantations was also explored. For those of you unfamiliar with the concept, a tree is extracted from one country and placed in an unfamiliar environment wherein pests are known to proliferate. The nature of the invasion to follow, if there is one, is crucial to understanding how invasive species can proliferate in new territories. To conclude, all of this is to say that stakeholders were involved throughout the whole process. And something that we discovered is that users were very keen on new tools, new initiatives, new approaches in the early stages of the invasion, addressing the problem before it has a chance to worsen. as we say. This ultimately gave rise to the successor initiative, FORSET, Forest Surveillance with Artificial Intelligence and Digital Technologies. Started last year and will run all the way to 2028. As already mentioned, it was coordinated by the University of Padua, Biodiversity, and it really focuses on the early stages of invasion, the early monitoring, the early detection. How are we pursuing this now? Well, remote sensing is once again in focus, this time using drone technology and satellite observation. We also have smart trap devices with sensors that can automatically send data back into the hands of researchers without the need for them to visit the traps in the field constantly. eDNA analysis and automatic identification are also pillars of the project. This is where artificial intelligence really comes in. And last but not least, I think you know this about our approach by now. Citizen scientists and stakeholders were extensively consulted throughout the whole process and continue to be as the project evolves. Now, we've come here today to talk about knowledge transfer and research continuity. So how are the two projects interlinked? How does HOMED feed into FORSET? Well, we have the automatic devices that I mentioned. The multifunnel traps first developed as part of HOMED are now informing the design of the smart traps in FORSET. Furthermore, the Silver Alert modeling outputs for the application are now feeding our understanding and our analyses of the target species of the FORSET project. Last but not least, AI identification in FORSET would not be possible without the ground-laying foundation first provided by HOMED. Something that also binds the two initiatives together is their approach to open data. We are working to ensure that all deliverables, all outputs, all publications are available for wider use, directly available to users, to stakeholders, to deploy in their own particular circumstances across Europe, and we hope eventually beyond. Something else that we work on, and something that you have heard enough by now, is the dialogue. We really seek to identify who is most affected by these issues and who is best placed to address them on the ground. So consultations on needs, requirements, perspectives, challenges is something that we undertake on a constant basis. All of this leads to solutions, products, outputs that are not only user-friendly for all manner of stakeholders, but economically sound, fit for the realities of Europe's environment and market. If I can conclude, there are three primary pillars bringing HOMED and FORSET together. We start off with research. What are the problems in need of addressing? What are the pests that we need to look out for? And how can we understand them better? This feeds into innovation. What are the technologies that can address the issues identified by the research? And how can we improve them if they exist? Finally, all of this is supported by collaboration. The research of HOMED and FORSET does not occur in a vacuum. It is the product of extensive collaboration across a multitude of countries, even beyond Europe, I have to say now, for the FORSET project. And it really helps ground our work in reality. On this note, I would like to conclude and let you know that you can find out more about FORSET at our booth. I'm working personally on the project, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I'm sure our coordinator, Biodiversity, would be happy to do so as well in the discussion segment. The QR code you see here allows you to access all outreach channels of the FORSET project, its website, social media accounts on LinkedIn and Blue Sky, and its newsletter. Thank you for your attention. Now, we will move on with the topic of entomology, and we will address the two projects, POSH-B and WildPOSH, again, successor initiatives, and how they're handling their data management plan. Denis Michet of the University of Mons will be delivering that talk remotely.
Hi, everybody. My name is Denis Michet. I'm the coordinator of the Horizon Project WildPOSH, and I'm going to be the one presenting how we manage data in the framework of this project. And I'm going to focus on how we associate other Horizon projects like one of. So I've been assisted in this presentation by my colleague Jordan, Sarah, and also my associates in Holloway University of London, Mark Brown. Just a bit of background regarding the whitewash project. As you may know, white fauna and flora are facing environmental challenges and disturbances. And one of the flagship group for which we have a lot of press release, a lot of information already, are the bees and the pollinators in general. And they are facing particular decline. And whitewash is focusing on one aspect of the decline, which is the impact of pesticide. This project is 4 years. We have multiple and milestone. I will not go much into details of this. Just a word on the consortium. We have 7 partners across all the continents, many academics. And I will also focus on just a few objectives that are more related to the data, as this symposium is about this. So one of the goals is to understand the causality between pesticide and predator health. And for that, we will study the impact of pesticide at different levels, in the lab, semi-field, and in the field. And we also aim to collect all the data related to this topic from the project itself, so the data produced by the project, but also data from the literature and from the other projects. So the project is structured in 9 work packages. The 3 first one are data collection. We have 1 work package dedicated to data management and collection of data in silico, which I will come back to right after. And then we have some integrative work packages. Work package 5 that will use all the data to develop risk assessment methodology. Then we have some work package dealing with communication and policy. So the model species that we study are pollinators, so bees, but not only bees. We also work on hoverflies. So the main aspect of my presentation will be how we manage data. And here we are in a particular framework of the European Pollinator Initiative, which implies that we have multiple projects at the same time on the subject, but also multiple projects in the time. So just one slide on the European Pollinator Initiative. European Pollinator Initiative, it's an initiative from the European Commission. And like for any initiative of the European Commission, multiple points of action are considered to tackle this, the problematic here. The problematic is the pollinator conservation. So we have some action related to the improvement of knowledge, some action to tackle the cause of the decline, and some action to raise awareness. So in the framework of the first set of the action, improving knowledge, there were a lot of goals through the Horizon pillar, but also through some calls for tenders from the government. So we have in the whitewash project, one more package is dedicated to build an open source curated database, including all the information that we are collecting in this whitewash project. And of course, this work package 4 is connected with all the other work packages. So we have one data management plan for the project, and we are following the FAIR principle, so findable, accessible, interoperability, and reusability. So I will not go into detail to this because I'm sure that many presentations were about this point. So we apply the FAIR principle for the whitewash project. But we had also to think about the afterlife of the project and also how to integrate in the best way possible all data sets with existing data sets, including the OJB project. And so for that, we had to think about a repository system that is accessible to all the other European projects and could include also previous data sets. So we use the EU that was developed by BeLife Association, funded by the European Commission. So I invite you to go on this monitor hub, to check all the facilities of this hub. I will just come here as we don't have a lot of time, just to show you how we assure this continuity in the data management plan with the other project. So we set up a different strategy with different steps. And what we do is to be sure that every single project follow the same steps. To be sure that at the end of this process, we produce data sets that can be merged and can be easily used and understood by the different members of the different projects. So the first thing that we did is to define the requirement of each group in the sense of we have, of course, questions that are around pollinator. So there are common methodology and there are common questions. So associated to this common question and common methodology, there are some common data, some common metrics that are used. So first, we did work to ensure that every group has its requirement met in this platform. So every kind of data can be included in this platform. Then we ask every group to send some templates that they use, and then there is a process of converging to the similar templates. And for that, we have a glossary, a vocabulary that is now under, they were submitted in +1. And this helps us to ensure that we define the same way every single term. Of course, this applies to the metadata structure too. So we want to be sure that every data is actually to similar metadata with the same standardization, the same acquisition, the same processes. And with all these different steps, we are therefore able to have the templates that are ready. Then you fill with the data, and then thanks to the centralization of this file, you can upload. And there is a filter there where you can have a quality for the data that you have. And this data can, of course, be used by users that they request the data, and the person that has the right of the data can accept or not to provide this data. So in a few words, this is how we are organizing this data pipeline for multiple projects related to pollinators in Europe. Thank you for listening, and I'm here with you now to answer any.
Thank you, Denis. A very interesting approach to data management for a very important topic, pollinations. We have a number of other projects for pollination represented at our stand, so you're welcome to take a look at those. We now take the subject of data forward with our last two presentations, and the first one concerns the so-called IP4OS project, the intellectual property for open science. The talk will be delivered by Katharina Miller of Miller International Knowledge.
Hello and welcome to this video on the IP4OS, Gaining Knowledge Across Borders, the IP4OS framework for biodiversity data continuity and policy impact. My name is Katharina Miller. I'm a lawyer. I'm based in Madrid in Spain. I'm very happy to greet you all in Bogota and all over the world. And I'm the work package leader, work package 3 of the IP4OS project. So first of all, I would like to do a short introduction to the Miller International Knowledge, MIC, law firm, which is a partner of the IP4OS project. Then I would like to present to you the challenge, what is our vision, and some takeaways. Miller International Knowledge is a multidisciplinary law firm based in Madrid, Spain. We are experts in law, in ethics, and also in open science governance. We design tools and protocols for open licensing, stakeholder co-ownership, cross-border data flow regulation, and in general, we help researchers and institutions to get their knowledge out with knowledge valorization. And as MIC, as Miller International Knowledge, we are partner of the IP4OS project. Here you can see a short overview. IP4OS stands for Intellectual Properties for Open Science. We are 8 European partner institutions across 6 European countries, which is Germany with the University of Kiel, URIS, which is a private company. In Sweden, we are with the Karolinska Institute. In Spain, represented by MIC, Miller International Knowledge. In the Netherlands, by the Knowledge Valorization Partners, ASTP, and the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, IFLA. Bulgaria, with you in Bogota, with TENFA, and Croatia, represented by the University of Zagreb. This is us in IP4OS. We are a project that is 2 years long. We have started in January, so we are in month 10 currently. We have another 1 year and 3 months to go, and we are funded at 2 million euros. What are our main objectives? Our main objective is to promote the as open as possible, as close as necessary principle by integrating agile IP management with open science OS practices through a concerted IP-OS approach. What are going to be our key achievements and deliverables, because we are only in month 10, so not all deliverables or key achievements have been reached. So at our core part is really the synergy framework, which once developed and launched, will be a best practices manual outlining how to balance IPR protections, or intellectual property rights protection, and open science, including many examples and recommendations. Of course, we have outreach and awareness initiatives because we want to increase the awareness of IPR tools that support open science by plus 50% among the communities in practice via campaigns featuring advocates, media, webinars, and case sharing. And last but not least, we also offer a capacity building program and designed and delivered the Synergy Core curriculum targeting multi-professional teams across Europe. And as we are very ambitious, we want to train 300 professionals plus 27 multi-client. Yeah, as I told you, there is a challenge, and I think you know best. One of our co-authors is expert in global biodiversity data. So that's why we know that this data is fragmented and very project bound. It's not bad as such. However, as it's project bound, there might be loss of data after the funding ends, and this could lead to a loss of knowledge continuity. You work with legal frameworks like the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, supported by the Nagoya Protocol, which often clashes with open science ideals. I will come back to this in a moment. In general, why does biodiversity data matter? Well, it is critical for conservation, climate action, and sustainability in general. And the digital sequence information, DSI, and genetic resources pose this legal dilemma. And the tension lies in the open access versus sovereign rights benefit sharing. And to this I will come now. So the legal ethical interface is to navigate the CBD and the Nagoya Protocol obligations. And again, CBD stands for the Convention on Biological Diversity, which, as we all know, is an international treaty which is adopted at the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Its main goals are the conservation of biodiversity, like with protecting species and ecosystems, sustainable use of its components by using biological resources without depleting them, and fair, equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources. For example, when companies or researchers use genetic material from plants and which provides specific rules for access and benefit sharing, the ABS. And in the context of this presentation, it's relevant because it governs how biodiversity and genetic data, including digital sequence information, can be shared and reused internationally, and this often creates tension with open access principles. So here a disclaimer. IP4OS has not been, or it's not really tackling the
Seem to be experiencing some difficulties. I'm sorry with the video.
this issue of biodiversity data. It's more on a general tackling the issues of data, open science, and intellectual property rights, and these principles and how they shock. However, there could be a possibility that IP4OS bridges open science and sustainable policy making, which then could serve you to overcome the tensions and problems, challenges that we have seen before. The aim of IP4OS in general is to create a resilient legal and ethical framework for long-term knowledge continuity, which again could serve you later to find your way through your dilemmas and tensions. And the principles of IP4OS are transparency, reproducibility, and co-creation. The IP4OS framework bases on 3 pillars: policy alignment on the one hand. We tackle the harmonization of national and EU frameworks. We also tackle infrastructure and governance by embedding open science in institutions, and we want to reach legal continuity by ensuring long-term data usability and legacy. What is the vision? Well, the question is if IP4OS can extend the life of biodiversity data sets. I'm very realistic and humble enough to not pretend that it does, that IP4OS can do this. However, we will see in December and afterwards if we are able to provide you with the support. Yeah, also with the support of the institutional memory from individual projects to collective infrastructures, and to ensure data sets remain fair are by responsibly licensed. So what could have been the takeaways now? IP4S might be an enabling framework for responsible, lasting open science. Biodiversity data continuity depends on aligning legal, ethical, and technical systems, and open necessarily does not mean unregulated, it means responsibly shared. Yeah, that it is from us, from myself and my two co-authors. We are very happy now to receive your questions and see you now for your questions.
Thank you, Katerina. I want to apologize to you personally, as you're online, and to our audiences here and online for the video. I'm sorry if you've missed anything. I'm sure Katerina will be happy to provide some elaboration on the points in the video that were a little visually obstructed. We have some very nice one-pagers for IP4OS at our stand that provide all of this information as well, so feel free to consult those afterwards. We now move on to our final showcase, almost as if we planned it that way, that the next presentation is very much connected to IP4OS. It's the GATE initiative, also delivered by a member of Miller International Knowledge, Vanessa Guzek.
Hello and welcome to the presentation of the Open Science Learning Gate, which I will be referring to as GATE in this presentation. GATE is a community-based and non-profit initiative designed to ensure continuous knowledge exchange and open data flow on the state of open science, and to support reliable research and optimum open science capacity building, practice, and policies. And my name is Marie Alavi, and I'm the co-developer of the GATE and representing the GATE team on behalf of Annika Müller-Karabir, on behalf of our research team members. And this session is also accompanied by Vanessa Guzek and Katerina Miller from Miller International Knowledge, in short MIG, who offer GATE as our secretariat legal advice. Vanessa and Katerina are there for the Q&A session as well. In my talk, I will explain how GATE contributes to open science. I will also demonstrate the relevance of open science to biodiversity research. We will talk about how GATE actually works, and I will invite you to share your knowledge on open science via the so-called GATE race. Biodiversity research can benefit significantly from open research practices in which data are systematically shared, reused, and made interoperable to support innovative solutions or even evidence-based decision-making regarding a sustainable management of natural resources. And to advance open science is therefore of utmost importance in order to ensure transparent data circulation, to enhance trustworthiness, and also to ensure reliability and reproducibility of research outcomes. And in order to advance research, not only in biodiversity, but also in general, and to create societal and environmental benefits through scientific progress, it is necessary for the research community to agree on guiding thoughts of open science and responsible conduct of research. And we have the UNESCO principles and the following initiatives that are a great starting point for this endeavor to understand actually what open science is. We must follow practices that promote these guiding thoughts and at the same time be able to respond to new developments and challenges, such as the integration of artificial intelligence into research, or also new scientific methodologies that we develop. In addition, we need data infrastructures that are connected across across individual, institutional, and national systems, and at the same time also capable to respond to new demands in an agile manner. Consider, for example, current threats with regards to data management. And guiding thoughts and practices such as FAIR principles, data quality, reliability, traceability, or in terms of AI, interacting with openly accessible data, also factual accuracy, and many, many more are essentials of responsible open data flow. And this is the knowledge, we can call it data, Gate captures from the community. You see, I'm talking about some dynamics in research. From our perspective, it is very important to acknowledge the evolving nature of research. Just an example, once we started with definitions for accessibility in general, and responsible research and research ethics, today we integrate digital tools and AI along with all the chances and threats. And we state questions regarding data security and so on. And this is crucial. We have to bear in mind that research is evolving, and therefore we have to engage in an ongoing dialogue about the guiding thoughts of open science and open data, rather than to rely on static definitions that lack the development. And this is why we have developed the GATE. GATE supports continuous and community-based knowledge exchange on open science guiding thoughts and practices on open data, and thus it empowers research communities, including researchers, knowledge creators who are informing and educating on open science, funders, policymakers, and data infrastructures to share their knowledge and stay informed regarding the state and development of open science, including the impact of AI on research and data ethics, and also to create up-to-date or even optimize their open science capacities and structures in order to support or educate others. And this promotion of sustainable access to knowledge and resources on open science ultimately bridges the gap between science, structures, and policy. Because, for example, funders and policymakers can align their policies, and data infrastructures can upscale their systems according to the newest needs and developments. So GATE's multi-level approach enables both transforming scientific results into trustworthy innovation by promoting open science practices covered by open science guiding thoughts that we agree on, thereby accelerating progress towards global biodiversity goals and fostering equitable participation in the open science ecosystem. And second, it enables an informed and responsive research community, policy and systems that are able to adapt to developments, be there innovations or threats or other developments. So let me very briefly explain how the GATE lifecycle actually works. We continuously invite knowledge creators to provide their knowledge on open science, meaning on the guiding thoughts and practices they stress in their works via a questionnaire. And who are knowledge creators? Knowledge creators are all who inform or educate on open science and open science practices, authors of papers, and so on. And this questionnaire is the so-called GATE service, and I invite all of you who develop any kind of materials informing or educating on open science to use the GATE service and provide your knowledge. You will find the link on our webpage or at the end of this presentation, or Vanessa is able to share the link with you. We then structure this data collected and feed it back to the wider community via annual GATE reports. And who are the GATE communities? First of all, those who create knowledge as I said, educators, authors of papers, etc., but also researchers, funders, policymakers, and infrastructure providers. All these are supported by the GATE. And this life cycle is a continuous knowledge exchange loop, supporting the research environment for the upcoming years. These are examples of communities which already intersected their materials to the GATE service, such as the NFDI, National Data Infrastructure in Germany, or IOSC materials, or data infrastructures we recommend to knowledge creators such as Zenodo, OSF, or catalogs such as FOD. And as I said, those who create any kind of materials on open science, you're warmly welcomed to provide your knowledge to the GATE service. You can access it via this QR code. We share the link with you, or have a look on our webpage, www.opensciencegate.com. And you can benefit. You not only share your data, but also benefit from the GATE service and the upcoming GATE report, because you receive guidance on current open science guiding thoughts. You can thus optimize your materials, and if you wish, you can be named in the next GATE report and enhance the visibility of your materials. So thank you very much. Me and the GATE team are happy if you reach out to us with any questions and contribute to our data collection via the GATE service, so that we can advance open science practices and thus also support the research in biodiversity. And now I'm sure that Vanessa and Katarina are happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Truly an inspiring note to end on, community building and an open call for all of us to consider our own contributions to open science. I'm happy to say that we finished with the talks 10 minutes early, which gives us all the more time for inputs and questions. But before I go to that, I'd like to see if our presenters have any additional points to add, since they're live with us. If any of them want to join in and add something to their outputs, I'd be very happy to give them the floor. If not, we move on straight to questions. Sorry, I forgot my microphone. But yeah, we can see if is anyone raising their hand on Zoom? Okay, perfect. Then in that case, I will now give the floor to questions. Obviously, we can address the wonderful discussion points proposed by Caitlin in her presentation, but I'm sure you have some questions of your own. I will come to you personally, give you the microphone. Just let me know who you're addressing your question to. See, we have our first query. Please, sir.
Many thanks. It's Anton Günth from Botanic Garden Berlin. It's not a question, it's rather a comment for the colleagues from the Museum für Naturkunde, because they asked whether institutions could collaborate in a better way on creating science policy documentations and data strategies and so forth. And I wanted to mention that in the context of CTAF, the Consortium of European Taxonomic organizations, we created a wiki page for compiling data policies openly and want to start a collaboration between institutions doing exactly this. And this would be, I would say, the ideal entry point for the colleagues from the MFN. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wonder if Caitlin would like to respond to this excellent point. Maybe if our technical team can, do we have a raised hand or? I think maybe we don't. Is anyone raising their hands on Zoom? Of course, that's very good. We have input from Katerina. I'll just wait if Caitlin wants to address the point. If not, I give the floor to Katerina online. Just a moment, bear with us. It's a long conference and a lot of technical specifications to be observed.
Hola. Hello?
Well, I guess then we. Yes, of course. So if Caitlin has nothing to add, maybe we address Katerina. I don't know. We give the floor to
Hello?
Katerina.
Oh, do I work now? You can hear me? Thank you, Anton. I
give her the floor.
wasn't. Oh, yes. Hi, thank
Or
you,
is the Zoom?
Anton.
Just can we? Or maybe if she writes it in the chat, I can read it out. It's fine. Can we? Oh, maybe you can relay the question.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm paying attention to you. Would you like to say something? Hi. Katerina, I could hear you before. Would you like to say something?
You can put it in the chat. If you can put your observations in the chat or questions.
Oh, Kathleen, I think. I could hear someone before. We still have time anyway.
Yeah, we have time.
Hello?
Okay, so maybe.
No, yes.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say thank you, Anton. We'll make sure that we have a look into that and I'll reach out to you for any more questions about the CTAF policy collection.
She wanted to say thank you to everybody and that you can reach out in the policy collection session, something like that.
Thank you. I think maybe to avoid confusion from now on, as we're experiencing some difficulties with, maybe the speakers can address all their points in the chat, and our volunteer can let us know what they write in the chat, and I can read it out loud for everyone. I think that will be faster. So I invite both Katharina and Caitlin to write whatever it is they want to add in the chat. I'll read it out loud for everyone. In the meantime, we have another query or observation.
Thank you. Yeah, so Guy Cochran from the Global Biodata Coalition and the EMBL, European Bioinformatics Institute. So it's a question to Christos. So you mentioned that biodiversity data infrastructure should be compact. I wondered if you wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Give the floor straight to Christos.
Yeah, well, that has, the context of not only integration, but somehow, the composability as well. We build, something in the context of the Biodiversity Meets Data project. So we hope that this approach, helps very well the network because, for example, you need, data from multiple domains, and then you need to harmonize them, and then you need to manage them, and then you need to perhaps to analyze them under the same, software or under the same framework, and then to derive, the knowledge from there. That was actually the meaning of that. Was it too strong?
Wait, so that our audiences online can hear as well. Sorry.
So I think that's, I understand. So I would, yeah, so it's sort of compacted through integration. Yeah.
Okay. See, Sandra has an observation as well, please.
Yes. Thank you to all the presenters. This is just an observation. I'm Sandra Luque from, participated in BioAura, but I'm here also with my head as IPES in the monitoring that we're working. And the comment come from, we just finished, you will all see the report, and please participate in the review that will come out soon. But the main problem we have identified is fragmentation on information, exactly what we're discussing here. So several of you presented a way to get together this knowledge and this data, which we don't have today. Europe is doing efforts, but I think well, not just what we think, what we look at for all the information we got is, it's like we're adding another layer of complexity. Now we are a lot of networks and different projects that are trying to get different systems in order to gather the information. But not just one. We see here in this room how many we are. And then at the end, we are like creating layers and layers. Perhaps this conference, I hope, will help somehow to bridge, this enormous gap we have, because, in IPES we have TSU, which is the technical unit that helped us, and they did a massive research in all the information, different sort of information infrastructures we have at the world level. We have by national, by continent, and global. And it's very difficult to identify, at the end where the data is and which are these depository. I'm just throwing this to the community because here you are the community that is trying to get some synthesis analysis, get some knowledge, at least to get into synthesis analysis. And perhaps from here we can think on some key ideas on how we can improve this new layer we're creating of, in the way you are working, Biodiversity working, and EBOC. And I'm talking about Europe, and I can tell you about Asia and about Latin America as well. It has their very own depositories and different networks as well that are building up. So it's just, a nice brainstorming to start with if you want.
It's a very nice segue, a call to action and opinion, if ever I heard one. Maybe someone would like to respond to this straight away? Niels, please.
Yes, I think that's a big challenge to get everything aligned, and so one way out there is to adopt standards. So through the BMD project, we move all the data through GBIF and make it Darwin Core compliant. From there, you can pull it in any analysis workflow you would like. But that's the European landscape. You're talking about Asia, but I'm not so, well, I know Asia is not sharing that much data to GBIF, so I'm not sure where the Asian data is sitting. America has a lot of data on GBIF.
Yeah, America, yes. But not Latin America, South America, Central America, and even in Europe. I can talk for France, still we are, way long not to share all the data in GBIF. There's presentation here and at least 3 presentations on data from the depository of biodiversity at the national level. The problem is we have a lot of national level depositories that are not sharing the data in GBIF. This is worked fantastically in Nordic countries, but once you go, especially Mediterranean countries, Spain is doing better, I must say, but Italy and France is an example, just to provide 2 bad examples. They are not sharing what they should be sharing. So that's the problem. That's, how we can promote people to really see the importance of sharing the data if we want to progress, in the monitoring.
I saw that Jesus has a point, but Niels, do you want to respond to that immediately, or?
So I think people are sitting on their data still, and they're afraid that the data gets stolen and misused. So, but well, for a large part of the species, that is not like the case. So I think those data can be mobilized quite easily, and then we have to indeed look into issues of sensitive species data and things like that, because that's the difficulty when you move that to a public domain. Well, we're working towards solutions to excluding that and then still fit it in workflows through adhering to Darwin Core data standards. But well, standardization, even in the Netherlands, we have a parallel data infrastructure next to mobilization of data to GBIF. So it's still true, but I think we're moving in the right direction, and by providing tools that are free for end users and end user communities, but the requirement that the data can be withdrawn from APIs might be an incentive to mobilize these data to global portals.
Thank you. We have an intervention from Christos as well.
Yeah, I'd like to bring this point here that international organizations, for example, the IPBES, they need actually information, okay? They need knowledge, probably innovation in order to do the jobs and try, to implement the framework they bring in. So we're not talking, only about data, but we're talking about further processes after the data. Of course, data is the basic layer, but we talk about, many processes then after in order to be able to help you. okay? And that's why, for example, in Europe, the research infrastructures, and the projects, they come together, publishers, etc. They come together and they try, to find out ways how we can do that and how we can produce, some kind of synthesis on which you can build, on which you can see, in which way your framework is addressed and the goals are achieved, and et cetera, et cetera. That's why this is the reason we are join forces and making, these networks. And it's not only about biodiversity. One Health, is, it was a very big surprise, to all of us, because when we asked to the research infrastructures, hang on, is there any network, is there any organization that brings together all of us who are dealing with the life component of the biosphere? There was nothing. There were, a few on the medicine or on the veterinary, and they don't talk even, to each other. So that's the big point, I think.
Sandra, Niels, any points on this? Any responses? Okay. A very excellent exchange. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask if anyone in the chat has anything to add. Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Otherwise, I move on to my own. I've been looking forward, because yesterday we didn't have the opportunity to touch on them, so I'll do that now. These are addressed to all the speakers, both those of us here and online. I myself am a speaker, so I'll try to go easy on myself. But I think at the end of everything, we are talking about knowledge transfer and research continuity across projects and initiatives, going within and beyond. And we heard of many examples which solidify this point. But I really like to ask a more general question, because each presentation had its own flair, its own flavor. So what I really want to ask is, do you think there is a metric for the reusability and longevity of scientific results? Be it in the context of projects, be it in the context of initiatives, but what makes a result truly last? How can we make it last? How do we ensure it is not contained within the temporal bounds of its own initiatives? It's not an easy question, I grant you, but this is what we are approaching in this session. Niels is also with us, and he presented yesterday, so I would love to hear his opinion as well. But Christos, Maria, I can say a few words on my side on behalf of Forset. Pensoft is experienced in looking to the future, looking at the long term. And what I can say, and I hope Professor Penev, the CEO and founder of our company, will agree, it is all about diversity and variety of tools and approaches. We engage our audience on multiple fronts in a variety of ways. And yes, this is the communications perspective, but it is important, making it accessible to our audience, ensuring that we follow their needs. I think what truly makes research last is adapting it to the realities of the issue, the problem, the topic it is trying to address, grounding it in the real world, as it were. But those are my 2 cents. I would now love to hear from our speakers. Christos, please.
I think that the first criterion or measure, on the data longevity is their quality. And we have bright, let's say, examples in the scientific literature about this kind of data sets. Well before the data management technologies and the software and the cloud services came, on the picture. I remember when I was reading a book on biodiversity, and it was citing, the PASOC data set that gave, birth to thousands of publications. I mean, what else do you need? And then one other very successful example is the genetics and the genomics data, because the progress of these disciplines has been based specifically on the sharing of the data. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible. Starting from the human genome and moving on, progressively to the current situation, metagenomes and MAGs and all that stuff. I think that's the real measures, and we have, to get the lessons that learned. However, I'm coming back to Niels' comment. People's attitude I have produced this data, I'm sitting on this data, and nobody else will take, away from me until I die. This is, things that can be serious impediments on this.
Thank you, Christos. All excellent points. I'm really sad that Quentin is not here in the room, because yesterday he had a lovely talk exactly on this topic about the research silos that we all have in our projects. Sometimes we are narrow-minded because of our funding. Sometimes we want to sit on our own research. So yes, an excellent point. And I think Christos has something to Niels has something to add. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think now that data is becoming available with DOIs, and that data is citable, and that the data can be attributed to the people that mobilized it, that's a very strong way forward. And additionally to that, you can also follow the citation of the data set. So now if a data set is cited a lot, probably it's a very valuable data set. So if you want to have an index, that might work out. So in BMD, all the end products will be issued with DOIs, but also the workflows. So we're going to work with Workflow Hub. So if that's a useful workflow, you can reuse the workflow and cite the workflow. So that's that's a solution that we are following.
Of course, from Maria now.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to add that, I mean, a way to keep all this like research, I mean, like the amazing work that IPES, for example, is doing, gathering information, all the ecosystem assessments, really gather all this information. But of course, like the risk also in one of these presentations, that the longer the data and the products, like it gets more forgotten, no? And the ways, for example, that we are trying to tackle that, at least in Biodiversity, is like how we can actually make use of AI. Of course, we cannot make relying on everything on AI, but really to get like a pool of information that it can be drawn easily, like for answering, for example, questions from policymaking. And this is a way, for example, that we can evaluate the impact from that research. But I mean, from now, we're tackling also like the EU projects in a way, no? Because that's what we are funding. But I mean, the amount of projects that they are not EU funded, but they are just like nationally funded as well. Like, I mean, we need this other layer, no, of complexity and how to reach them and how to, we do communicate. And I mean, it's another step in there, but we will work on that hopefully.
There is always the danger, I think, of delving too deep into the tools, relying too much on the tools and not the right interaction. The point on AI stands very strongly here. I think we have a point in the chat. Let me see. So Caitlin has a point to make. I really value documentation and information about the data to facilitate data reuse and longevity. For me, it removes a barrier to entry in accessing and reuse of data. When it's easier to work with, I want to work with it more. Okay. And again, an excellent point. Maybe someone would like to take on, otherwise, there we go. Sorry, who raised their hand? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's not to it's to the previous point really, but so I mean it's great that there are that there are now more robust systems for giving DOIs to data and for workflows, but I think there's another thing that has to happen. So that's sort of mechanistic and it's important. But if you look at the genomics world, even though there is a very strong history of reuse of data, I think a lot of that is because actually genomics data make very little sense in isolation. You sort of have to have everything together. But the history goes back to the 1980s, and there have always been exceptions for identifiers for data records, for sequences. And it's always been possible to cite them. And you actually now, so if you look at so people do cite data already. If you look at the scholarly literature, 15%, so for a set of databases that we track, some 4,000 databases, there's reference to those in 15% of the publications that come out. Either references by pointing to a data record by accession or DOI, or by mentioning the name of the resource in some appropriate, some way with appropriate context. But I think what needs to be added is very difficult. It's a sort of culture change, and so that we have a huge value chain in across the life sciences. People go out and they sample things, or they design studies, they sample things, they process samples, they produce data, they write tools, they run standards, they develop standards and ontologies and so on, and then they apply all of that, and all of this adds, and eventually there's a study can be published in the literature. And so this is not to take away from the publishers, because that narrative that puts everything together is really important, but people are adding huge value along the way. And so the tools, DOIs for data, accessions, all these things, and looking, systematic ways of looking at citations and indices and so on, these are really important ways in which we can track things. But actually, until we really go through a culture change and value the contributions of those who are doing things with data, say, so people who are producing the software, people who are developing the standards, people who are curating data and making data fair and so on, until we really recognize that as a valuable academic contribution, and until we stop just taking the paper as the basis for appointing people to new positions, for assessing institutions, evaluating institutions, I think we're the poorest. So I think that culture change is a real requirement, and it's very, very difficult to trigger that.
Thank you. I saw there was a question in the chat, but I take the opportunity, because you mentioned the genomics world. Yesterday we had a great presentation on genomics. Maybe we can hear that perspective, if you'd like. Sorry to call you out like this, but if you have a point to add.
Well, just before we got onto this topic, that's exactly the two things that I wrote down here, which was on the metrics that you were asking about, and how we're good at citing the end result, but we're less good at citing all the steps that were taken to get to that end result. And then you jumped into the kind of solutions that are already in place, which is great. And then Guy posed exactly this culture change that we need. That was what I was gonna comment before they already commented on. But yeah, I think in the genomics world, we've had the opportunity to move things forward maybe faster than in some other worlds. But we've still got a very long way to go.
Thank you. We're approaching the end, but I'd like to address what is in the chat, if I may. Yes, but the chat was first, yeah. So a data paper is an excellent way to unlock data set. Data providers really like to be associated as co-authors of this kind of paper, not only the DOI of the data set. Yes, an excellent point, Denis, thank you. Sorry, Sandra.
Yeah.
Please.
It's just following mainly what you two were saying, because one thing we didn't mention is in terms of the data, and data quality is temporal and spatial. Because if we don't have the temporality and this, the spatial data, we cannot answer to the issues we have here from 2030, and it's not this long. And this is the main problem. Just think on forest inventories. Nobody put the finger there. But forest inventory is a massive amount of public money in every country that has a forest inventory that's invested there. And still, even researchers in this country, most of the country, and I don't want to mention the long list, they don't have access to the exact coordinates of that for all the reasons you want. But nowadays, come on. So we still have this stigmatism in terms of the location. If we don't have the location of data, from forest to everything. And this is the main issue, it's just not all the metadata we have, because we have a lot of metadata, and in many cases very, very well organized. We have data papers as well, but we need the data. And in order to have high quality data, we need temporal and spatial information, and this is what we don't have yet. We have big gaps there.
Thank you.
So, and that's where BMD is going to scale up with high throughput biodiversity monitoring, hopefully. At least we're starting there. Yeah. So deploying camera traps, audio mods, and eDNA sampling at a massive scale. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we are approaching the end. So because the discussions are also insightful, starting another one would really cut it short. So I'd really like to say over the past 2 days, we've had an array of really inspiring presentations, really insightful reports. I'd like to thank once again all our 16 abstracts and their contributing authors, because we truly brought a wonderful symposium together. Niels and Christos, goes without saying, it would never have happened without their support. And we are very happy to have had all of you, both in person and online. As I mentioned, we will be at the booth today and tomorrow. We'll be very happy to answer further questions, to address further points. And it was truly lovely to meet you all and discuss these very important issues. Thank you again.